Mr. Joe Tucker, how are you, mate?
Very good. Great to be here. Thanks, Jordan. How are you, mate?
I'm good.
Loving the new beanies. Look at that. Game plans forever.
I know I've just stocked up on merch. I think I bought 150 of each color and I received the boxes and I was like, that seems a lot. And then you commented on my Facebook post, was like, that's a flipping lot of beanies. And I actually looked at the boxes and I go, yeah, it's a bit too many beanies. So now I'm just throwing them out like frisbees. I'm giving them to whoever wants them.
Yeah. Anyone in Melbourne, you will have a warm head thanks to game plans.
Keeping the property investors warm, mate.
Exactly.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you on. I think, I don't know how much, we probably catch up once a week or maybe once every fortnight or anything like that. So I always love having a bit of a yarn to you and see what's going on and how things are going. But I guess, the cool thing about us is we kind of got into the market at the same time and have pretty much been on the same journey in terms of regulations and policies and COVID and all that sort of stuff. And I think we're both born in 92 and we're both come from a Dutch background. So we're very similar in some way, shape or form.
This is the only time you'll see us together in the same room. It'll only ever be a virtual room, never a physical room, because we are the same person. So
I wonder if our names are like, what's that thing where you replace letters, you move letters around and it spells another name?
Yeah.
Listeners, don't try it.
Don't try it.
But yeah, man, I just wanted to get your sort of thoughts and philosophy on building out a portfolio. Now that you've heavily transitioned into and killing that buyer's agent role, I wonder, how's your own journey sort of built that philosophy and how does it sort of look today?
Yeah, well, this is why, I think every buyer's agent and everyone should be involved and every client should be requesting a game plan, strategy plan, right? The platform that you provide here is because people don't do the legwork at the beginning, right? This is how I kind of talk to my clients. We need to understand where you are right now, but we also need to understand where you're going to go. And what I love is that the platform that you have, the game plan strategy, is building the bridge to be able to get you there. Now, it's not going to say crystal clear. It's going to be step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to be step 1. We're going to get crystal clear on that. And then once we've done that, it might be a little bit different. It can't be a static piece of paper where it says, those 10 steps. But we'll be able to say, look, we're going to get you a 5% growth, 6% growth minimum, and then a 4% yield. And that's going to allow you to get into this next step. And then when that next step is there, you can factor in that exact property. Great. It's now a 7% growth and a 4.5% yield. That's going to fundamentally shift the platform and say what the next best move is. So it tied in nicely with my philosophy for property investing, which I believe that there's 4 stages. There's foundation, accumulation, acceleration, and then legacy. The majority of your time, well, actually, it's going to be different for everyone, but the foundation stage is all about just building yourself up mentally and educationally to be able to then get into the property market. And it means preparing everything, because if you build a house on terrible foundations, it's just not going to do too well. The next stage is accumulation, and that's where you're starting to accumulate property. So we start to build out an asset base of portfolios. And the way I like to build out my portfolios and help clients is having future value add potential. So we're not buying the end product here, like house and land packages or off the plan apartments, but it just allows us to either renovate it, subdivide, develop, split the block, sell off the land, add a property on there, or do something that is going to get us to that next level. But we don't need to know how to do that. We don't need to be a property developer. We don't need to know how to subdivide and split those blocks off there just yet. How do you think about it in those? Now I'm kind of turning the tables, but
it's good. And look, I really appreciate the shout out with the platform. Wasn't the intent. I'll pay you later. But yeah, I guess that's kind of big.
I get paid in beanies. I'm getting a box of 150 beanies for that. So thank you.
At your doorstep tomorrow. I guess it's kind of the same thing. I mean, I've come across the similar challenges of, you and I both know many people in the space, and a lot of the older generation have an opportunity where were able to buy a significant amount of properties, using specific tactics or re-leveraging in a world that was much easier to do so. And so I think the biggest thing for me when I was building out my portfolio was going from reading Steve McKnight's book of 250 properties in 3 years or whatever it is to going, oh, I bought one property, I've been sitting that on for 2 years and I can't borrow anything more. So what am I doing wrong? And I think that whole mindset shift and understanding there's a lot more that goes into property than just buy one, refinance, buy another. That whole borrowing capacity thing coming into place and lending regulations changing. It was really hard for me to crack onto that mindset and then, articulate that to other people as well. So I think, as you're mentioning with the platform, it's not we're buying 2 properties every year for the next 10 years. It's, when can we actually afford to buy this next property based on savings and borrowing capacity to be able to get us to our end goal, even if it takes us 20 years to get there. We want to put a very conservative, detailed plan in place. And if things work out for the better, we can get there sooner. But, I think it's just making about informed decisions around the next purchase. And when things change, because as we all know, things can change, is reaccounting for it from there.
Yeah, definitely. There needs to be a strategy attached. Previously, unlimited borrowing capacity, crazy high debt to income ratios would allow you to purchase whatever you want. Now, it used to be like, oh, property is a bricks and mortar game and there's a couple of loans thrown in the middle. Now it's completely shifted. Instead of being 80%, 90%, houses and 10% finance, it's now flipped the other way around. It's 90% finance, 10% houses. So you really need to make sure that you have a solid A team around you that is going to help you map out that progress and process to say, what is the next best purchase that's going to allow me to get that next purchase? And those are types of conversations that you're having with your buyer's agent and your mortgage broker as well. But what I guess kind of philosophy-wise, talking about those 4 stages, right? The foundation, that's your education. That's where you're getting there. Accumulation is where you're building up that asset base until you hit that wall. And then acceleration is where you start to turn around and look at that portfolio and see where I can optimize it. So should I be doing a renovation on this property now to bring up the equity? Should I be doing a subdivision now? This is over 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So it's not like you need to know how to do it right now. But if you've got something that can be subdivided and split, awesome. You've already got the value built in. And then the goal is trying to buy that property under market value so you're not spending a lot of money and paying for the benefit of having a splitter block and not doing that, having a major high holding cost. And then the legacy part is, how do I pass this on? As a part of acceleration is then, how do I cash flow this thing? How do I turn this? Actually, that's probably the best way to kind of talk about it is really there's 2 resources that in property investing, there is just 2 resources. There is borrowing power and then there is cash or equity. And those 2 are never in line. So we never know, they're never equal at any one point in time. So you need to, wherever you are in your journey, is to identify where is your lacking resource. And when I started my property portfolio, my lacking resource was capital. I didn't have cash or equity. I had a good paying job and I had borrowing capacity, but I didn't have the equity there. So that's why I then used renovation to force the value. So I was able to manufacture that equity and build that base up, and buying under market value, putting sweat equity into them to build that base up until you hit that borrowing capacity wall. That's the way I like to think about it. Yeah. Then you can then start attacking the borrowing capacity in a way.
That's great. And it's a good way to put it as well, because I think you commonly see that from a lot of first home buyers or investors starting to build out their portfolios. They lack capital up front, have the borrowing capacity, and then once they save enough to get in, the switch almost flips, right? You're lacking, you got enough capital, but you're lacking borrowing capacity to get there. Pretty interesting way to think about it. Now, if you could go back to young Mr. Tucker, if you had the opportunity to, and sort of talk about building out a portfolio, what would you go back and tell yourself if you could?
Well, one of the biggest ones was the arrogance to think that you can do it all yourself. that this is exactly what you can do. You can go out there and do it all by yourself. You don't need a team. You don't need people. You can just make a property portfolio and go after it. So what I would be telling myself is, hey, join. And this is what I did do at the beginning. I joined a community of people, but I didn't really see the people that were doing what I wanted to do and ask them, how are you doing what you do? Like, that's all I do now. That's why we created Oz Property Investors. We've got 18,000 group of members. And all we do is go to the top experts and ask, how do you do what you do? Because I knew that was the biggest mistake I took. And then getting educated on how property works, reading all the books, but then also understanding the lending restrictions that are now. You read Steve McKnight's book, you read any of the others, it's great, but is it today's? Is it in today's? And then the biggest thing is just taking action. You learn, like I did. I've spent probably close to $100,000 on courses and education and all of this online, offline, say renovation, development, subdivision, all of that. But what taught me the most was buying a property, renovating it, and then looking at subdivision and how that process works. That's what taught me the most. So it gets to a point where I see people buying courses, paying for courses, going to the event, buying the books, doing the seminar, getting educated. Great. How many properties do you have? Oh, yeah, I'm just in the education phase. Oh, how long have you been doing it for? Oh, 6 years. Fantastic. Right. Okay. The true way to get educated is by, reading and picking up. Sorry, not reading. That helps to a degree. And then taking action.
Yeah, and it's funny, with all that money they've contributed towards the courses and the books, they probably could have used it as a deposit to get in. But you're right. I do think education is definitely valuable, but sometimes it's just better to learn by doing, even if you are going to make some mistakes, and it's inevitable. Everyone sort of makes mistakes along the journey. Is learn from the mistakes, make sure they're not huge, big financial mistakes, save yourself from that. But everyone's going to make little mistakes in the journey, and they're the best thing to potentially learn from. And I love what you guys do at Ozprop. I think it's a great thing. I think that the most interesting, and it's kind of what I did earlier on too with, an earlier podcast that I did, is just talk to everyone about how they did it. The funny thing is there's no one answer. Like, no one's got, they're not all saying exactly the same thing of exactly how to do it. Everyone's story is unique, and it was in a different time, and they had different techniques, and they used different strategies. And so, I think, a part of all of what you were just saying is no one's going to give you the specific answer that's going to work and make you a millionaire overnight. You got to go your own journey, learn your own way through, and learn what works for you, what makes you comfortable.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Now, you don't have to get into too much extravagant detail about your own sort of personal portfolio, but do you feel like you'd made any mistakes along the journey, or is there anything that you'd change in your portfolio if you could?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest mistake I made was my first purchase, but it was really up to before then. What I did is I handed over the keys of my financial future to a buyer's agent, expecting somebody else to care about my money as much as I did. That was the biggest mistake I ever made, was thinking that this person they got all the flashy marketing. They're the best buyer's agent in Sydney. They do all this crap. They looked good on the internet, and they got all these, whatever. They're on the media, they're on the news. There's ads everywhere. But it turns out it was just all nonsense. But the biggest learning that I took away from that is I didn't want to do the education. I did the education. Don't get me wrong. I did pass the education. I jumped right in, like I said, but if you're going to do this journey, no one cares about your money as much as you. So you are the person in the driver's seat. I let the buyer's agent drive. I gave them 100% full control. But when you're creating a team of people, you are always in the driver's seat of your financial future. And you've got your buyer's agent in your left-hand side guiding you. You've got your mortgage broker in the back. You've got your accountant in the back, and you've got your conveyancer there sitting, all riding shotgun. But if you expect anyone to care about your money as much as you're in for a bit of a surprise. So really, it was a dud of a property. Like the area was shocking. The property needed a renovation. I thought it was going to be $10,000. I ended up spending $30,000. After the renovation, it was, it was worth less, the same as or less than what I purchased it for after 30 grand. And the main lesson there was, well, two lessons were that you shouldn't hand over your keys, but also don't necessarily buy the cheapest property. Because I bought, it was 280,000. It was one of the cheapest properties that I could buy because I thought I'd dip my toe into property investing, right? But if I bought anywhere else at like $400,000, it would now be worth $750,000, $800,000, $900,000. But because it's worth $280,000, it's probably worth $350,000, scraping on $400,000 now, when we've just gone through the biggest boom in history. So yeah, that's one of the biggest mistakes. Those are the two biggest mistakes I made, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, it's a good story, and it's a good way to put it as well, because everyone's got their individual role, and solely by themselves, they'll do a good job on their individual role. But yeah, ultimately you're the one who's driving the car and got to keep everyone accountable. So I think it's a great experience to share, because sometimes a lot of people do come into that, well, if I'm using a buyer's agent, I'll wipe my hands clean and they can do everything, which a good buyer's agent should be able to take care of most of the work for you. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're in control of the final decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just a mental responsibility switch that I needed to take. And it was only that switch was forced on me when I was walking up the dilapidated steps that I had to spend 15 grand on. But it is realizing that you're there you're there to get a great property. They're going to find you, hopefully, if they're good, they'll find you a great property. But don't just fall for the glitz and glamour. There are a lot of great buyers agents out there that don't do any Facebook marketing and that kind of stuff. It's all they just go through referrals and through groups and those type of things. So don't fall for, if they've got a $1 million budget in marketing, it might mean that they're great, or it might be they're a high volume, crazy pumping through 1,000 leads in, 1,000 properties out. Is that going to be the best way to find the best properties? Probably not, in my
that's spot on. Now, mate, when I met you, you had a pretty cool job. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say what it was, just for, I don't know if you got any clauses or anything else that are out there, but it was a pretty funky job in a pretty funky company. And then I think 3 months later, you decided to flip the switch and jump out and become a buyer's agent. What do you think was that sort of real trigger for you to go, okay, I'm on the ladder, I'm earning a pay-as-you income, but now I really want to pursue this passion of buying property and turn it into a bit of a career?
Of that funky job. Yeah, it was three years later I decided, well, not that I decided, but I was there for 3 years in that fun, funky job. That was cool. So I was the head of sales for Australia's largest legal technology startup. So I won't name the name because I don't know if I'm allowed to, but you could probably find it out pretty quickly. But no, this has all been a part of my investing journey. So this is a deliberate focus of getting and starting this business. Back in 2015, I actually got my real estate license. I wanted to be a real estate agent. I wanted to invest in property. I went over to the UK and I met my wife's uncle, and he was a property investor. He had 18 properties in the UK. He just managed all of them himself, and that was what he did all day. Didn't really do it all day because every second week they'd be going off on holiday, living the dream. So I'm like, hey, what? So I just asked him all the questions and got super excited. So I'm like, cool, I'm going to come back to Australia. I'm going to become a real estate agent, because real estate agents, they hold the investing keys. They own the keys to the house. And then turns out that property agents, real estate agents have no idea about property investing. They know houses, but they don't know about property investing. So I realized that they only have a small salary, right? They get $60,000 a year, something like that. Then they get big commission. So it means that you can't actually borrow to buy property. So I completely kind of shifted that around to, okay, well, I need to maximize borrowing capacity. I need to get a lot of borrowing capacity. So I went into tech sales and fell down that path and built up to, head of sales of largest legal tech company. What then happened was, as I was building out my portfolio, I started to max out my borrowing capacity, exactly like what you were saying, exactly like what we're saying this day and age. So if I wanted to continue, I would optimize my loan. So I would speak to an investment savvy mortgage broker, and we've got a lot of them in the group. They can help you identify where you need to go, how you're going to get there, and all that fun stuff, and structuring the mortgages so that you do this one with a third tier, second tier, but eventually you will get tapped out. So the only way that you can continue to buy property after a certain amount of money is, one, make more money. So get a better job, get a better salary, and that will increase your borrowing capacity. And then two is start a business, own a business that generates a large amount of income, so you can then re-leverage through the business to be able to purchase property. So as a part of this, we created Oz Property Investors about 2 and a bit years ago. This has always been the case. I was always going to be a property buyer's agent because I wanted to tap out on borrowing capacity in my property portfolio, which is exactly what I did working at that previous company. I got all the equity and value out of my portfolio that I could, and then transitioned into business where I will be able to borrow and buy more property. It's the only way that you can do it this day and age, is to get a new salary, get paid more, or start something on the side that's going to give you more income and grow the portfolio like that.
Yeah, nice. It's a cracking way to put it, because it's very true. If you want to, and we were just talking briefly off the air, but if you want to continue building out the portfolio, you have to make a change. There's only so much you can borrow on a pay G income. And, as soon as you start to get to high levels in, six figures plus, it doesn't become as easy to start gaining a lot more unless you get into a much bigger role. So you do have to find either a second path of income, or, as you say, take the plunge, step out, and hopefully generate some more income through your own business. So that's awesome.
And actually, on that, like, a good point that I'd like to raise is we're all driving a vehicle, right? We're all driving our investment vehicle. For me, I like to accelerate my vehicle. So I put rocket boosters on, and I do renovation, I do subdivision, I do splitter blocks. I do that to accelerate myself through the journey, because I have an end goal that is rather large that I want to get to, and I want to help as many people get to their end goal as well. But with a normal everyday job, you can build a sustainable portfolio, but it is going to be over a longer period of time. It's going to take a little bit longer if you're not willing to do those extra value added things and grow, like do a subdivision, do a renovation. If you just buy the end product, you're going to have to go through organic growth to do that. Not saying that that's the bad thing to do, because you're a doctor, you're busy, you haven't got time to do those type of things. That's absolutely fine. But it's just acknowledging that it's going to take a longer window. For me, I want to accelerate incredibly quickly. So I've tapped out my borrowing capacity. Now I'm starting a business, and that's going to allow me to continue doing that. But it's not to say that a sustainable portfolio, a substantial portfolio, can't be built in 20, 30 years by a more slow, steady as she goes approach.
Yeah. I think it just depends on how proactive you want to be around building out your own portfolio. As you said, if you're a busy working professional that's paying you good income, you're better off spending your time doing that than taking 2 or 3 weeks off and doing a renovation, right? So it just depends how proactive you want to be along the journey. Now, mate, there's 1,001 of them out there, but if you had, and you probably hear a fair few of them with all the guests you get on to Oz Prop, but if you had one favorite property one-liner, what would it be?
I don't know. We talked about this question. I'm like, property one-liners. Like, what's a good property one-liner? Because I actually don't have a property one.
I don't know. Property is a game of finance, or I don't know. Everyone's got some
a classic.
You know what I mean?
My one is just a little bit of a different attitude around money. Like I grew up in a very just a normal household, but we didn't have much money at all. It didn't feel like that when we were growing up, which was really nice. Mum did a lot of effort and made that great. But people that say money doesn't matter and money isn't important are just kidding themselves. So the quote that I like is, money doesn't solve all your problems, but it does solve your money problems. So all the other problems are still going to be there, but you're not going to have those money problems as much as you think. So you can do other things and go out there and, you know, take some time off if you want to go on a holiday, or if you want to do what Steve Polisi does and live on the other side of the world. Like you've got optionality. So it's really just thinking money doesn't solve all your problems. Money isn't the root of all evil. Like it is something that there's a vehicle that allows you to buy your time back to be able to do those things. So money's the vehicle that allows you to buy your time back. Maybe that's my quote. Nice. I don't know.
Well, time is our only true currency. So I couldn't agree more, mate. Well,
yeah, that and crypto.
Yeah, where is crypto these days? I think it
don't look.
Took a crash last time I saw.
This is one thing. Stick to your lane. If you come to me and talk about property, I will tell you the best player. Like our saying is, buy the best property in the best location at the best price for the buyer brief, because the buyer brief is what paints the picture of what's the best property in the best location at the best price. But do not come to me for crypto or share advice, because and that's kind of like when you build your team out, you go to your mortgage broker and you ask them about structuring. That's not their thing. They can talk to you about lending within the structuring, but you go to your buyer's agent to talk about buying property. I had a mortgage broker say, hey, this property is not a good one. And I was like, well, what do you know about the area and why is it not a good one? And then he completely changes his mind. So stick your experts to their lane, let them be in their seats and then talk to them about that, but make sure they're all kind of in connection with each other and talking to each other. So they all know about each other and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is probably one of the longer podcasts you've had, I reckon.
It's good. I love it.
I love it. Short.
A bit of a chit chat. I totally agree. It's, you know, go to your specific person for specific advice. If you're after property, go to a property professional. If you're after Bitcoin, then go on Twitter or something. I don't know. But mate, it's always a pleasure having a chat. I'd love to get you back on at some point. I might write up a new set of questions and get you back on and have a bit of a yarn. But thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Always a pleasure. Stay well, guys. See you later.
Talk to you soon.